Oh, ready?
Yeah, I think I'll do it with the salvage, but I don't know if it'll work.
So we'll check for next class. All right, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wa salatu wa salam ala sayyidil anbiya wa mursaleen, nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in, amma ba'd. So today, inshallah, we're going to talk about adhan and iqamah. What did we talk about last time? You remember?
We talked about very short of prayer.
Huh? It was about prayer. Very good. Good.
It was very short.
Alhamdulillah. I'm very happy to hear that.
You want more? I can't say the end. Okay, we talked about
The ruling on the one who
who shortens the prayer, what's it called?
abandons. Right, the one who abandons prayer. So why did we talk about that, or why did he end with that? Why did he start the discussion with that? Why did he start the discussion, or why did he start the chapter off with the discussion?
We talked about capital punishment.
We talked about capital punishment.
Yeah, we talked about leading to basically apostasy.
We talked about apostasy. Why do you think he started off with the discussion with we're talking about apostasy? Like, yeah, why, like, instead of jumping straight into prayer, why did he start talking about that?
As like a precautionary, kind of like a,
To show the importance of prayer. So, right, when he starts talking about the ruling of the one who abandons prayer, he's actually, there are two ways to talk about something, right? You can either talk about its virtue, which is a way to start off, and you can also talk about the punishment for the one who leaves it off, right? Because these are two, this is the dichotomy you will find, even in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he talks about the people of paradise, what does he usually talk about after that? He talks about the people of the hellfire, right? So you'll always have that, Allah will always talk about good, he'll talk about bad. When he talks about oppression, he'll talk about freedom. So you'll find that going back and forth. If he talks about the Muslimin, he'll talk about the Kafirin. So you'll always find that. So this is it's a very common teaching tool to talk about the importance of something, or to express the importance of something. But today we're going to talk about adhan and iqama. What is adhan and what is iqama? All right. Right. Okay, good. So the adhan is basically the call to prayer, to call people to salvation, and the iqama is to call people to salvation also, right? No, but what is the purpose? What is the function of the adhan?
let people know, hey, it's time of prayer is coming.
The time of prayer is coming, right? That's basically what it is. Do I need the adhan to, okay, if the adhan isn't made, does that mean that the prayer time hasn't started? No, right? The prayer time is independent of that. This is just a warning to let people know that the prayer time has started. So how did the adhan start? Basically, the adhan started with a dream. Abdullah ibn Zayd, so basically there was a discussion on how should we call the people to prayer. When the prayer was first obligated, the adhan was not obligated with it. So there was a discussion on, okay, how do we start the prayer? How do we call the people to prayer? And the Prophet ﷺ was about to settle on having a bell, right? Actually having a bell to call the people to prayer, similar to the Christians. But that was the reason he didn't like it, right? So that was the reason he actually didn't like it, was because of that purpose. So what happened was that Abdullah ibn Zayd, he actually saw a dream. He saw a dream that he was purchasing bells, and then the guy said, shall I not teach you something better? So the man who was selling him the bells, he said, I'm going to teach you something better, and he taught him the adhan. So he went to the Prophet ﷺ, and he said that, Ya Rasulullah, I saw this dream, and this is what he said. And the Prophet ﷺ said it. He said, go call Bilal. Go tell Bilal. And have Bilal call the adhan. Why do you think the Prophet ﷺ, even though he saw the dream, right? Abdullah ibn Zayd was the one who saw the dream. Why do you think he ﷺ sent him to call Bilal? Right, because Bilal had a nice voice, right? Not only he didn't just have a nice voice, he had a very loud voice. He had a very thunderous voice. So the Prophet ﷺ told him to express this and to go tell Bilal. How do you think he felt? Like, he's the one that saw the dream, right? And then the Prophet ﷺ said, yeah, go tell him.
I don't know, a little hurt.
You think he caught some feels?
A little salty.
Caught some feelings?
I don't know.
I mean, maybe, but what did the Prophet ﷺ, even if a person, so the thing is, hurting people unintentionally, Islamically, there's actually nothing wrong with that, right? Because your intention isn't malice, right? You're not actually trying to hurt the person. But by the Prophet ﷺ doing this, what is he actually teaching Abdullah ibn Zayd?
Teaching.
Yes. Was it a teaching moment or no? Okay. Why is that?
Well, he had a dream.
He wanted to show him this is how the dream is to be manifested.
This is how the dream.
This is how to do it. Like, so for example, even though you might see something good, it doesn't mean that every person is right for every task. And this is part of being a good leader. Part of being a good leader is making sure that you assign the right people to the right tasks. All right. So then after that, after Bilal made the adhan, Umar came rushing out of his house. Like he wasn't even fully dressed. Like he was like he grabbed his izar. You could tell that he just came out of his house, was unprepared. And he said to the Prophet, you know, why was he in such a rush? He came to the Prophet, he said, Wallahi, I saw the same thing.
Oh, the dream.
The dream. He said, I saw the same. He said, I saw this. Wallahi, I saw this dream. Like when he heard the adhan, he was like, he was like, oh my God, I saw this dream too. And he ran to the Prophet to go and tell him, and which is why he was in such a rush, which is why he was in such haste. So who is the adhan? Who can make the adhan? For men. Even though we don't have any specific texts indicating that it is impermissible for women to make adhan. What's actually really interesting about that is that in the Hanabila, if a woman, so if the Maliki, Shafis, and the Ḥanbalis, if a woman actually makes adhan, that adhan will be considered invalid. What does that mean? That the adhan needs to be made again, right? Because it basically doesn't count. Like if she made adhan, it's the same as if she didn't make adhan, and a man has to go make it. The Hanafis take a different opinion. They say that it's makruh. It's disliked for a woman to make adhan. But if something is disliked, it doesn't mean that it is invalid. So she can make the adhan. It's disliked, it's disapproved, looked down on, but the adhan will still count. You understand the difference? All right. Same thing. No, it's not. So can I make prayer without the adhan and the iqamah? Yes, I can. Making the adhan and the iqamah is sunnah. There are some individual scholars who say that is an obligation, but in general, it is agreed upon to be a sunnah. All right. Like, what about among women? If there's just women, can they make adhan and iqamah?
Yes.
Right. So it's generally disliked.
It's generally disliked.
Yeah.
So you just say, what's no Jama'at?
So we will talk about that right now. So in general, it's disliked, but you have narrations from Aisha radiallahu anha where she used to make adhan and she used to make iqamah. Right? She used to for when it was just women. So if it was like a group of women, Aisha, she actually used to either herself or have someone else make adhan and make iqamah, and she would lead the women in prayer. And the way that women pray in congregation is different than the way men pray. Right? So when women pray, they actually the woman, the imama, she lines up and she's in the middle of the row. She's not in front. Right? So that's what's different about them. What's also interesting is that Imam Shafi'i and Imam Ahmed themselves, now this is not the madhāhib, but they themselves, they allowed it and they thought it was okay.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Madhāhib
versus the imam. Yeah. Yeah, it happens, right? What's the discussion? Right, so when is the adhan to be done? It's done for the 5 daily prayers, meaning that for Salatul Eid, there's no adhan. For janazah, there's no adhan. For any type of salawat, like any type of kusuf, for example, there is no adhan. Istisqa, there's no adhan. The adhan only applies to the 5 daily prayers, and it is a collective obligation. What does a collective obligation mean? Right, somebody has to do it. Right, somebody has to do it within the group. It doesn't mean that any individual has to do it, but somebody has to do it. Like, who's this? Hey, Amna, do you mind muting your microphone, please? So it is It is a collective obligation for meaning that somebody has to do it somewhere, right? Somebody has to do it somewhere, but it is not an individual obligation, meaning that if a person is praying by themselves, they don't have to, but it is recommended. So, and again, this is within the madhab. It is recommended for the traveler, the one who missed the prayer. What does that mean? Right, if you missed salah, you woke up after the fajr was over, after fajr time ended, you woke up and you saw that the sun was out. At that point, what should you do? Look, you woke up at night, it's like way past that time. You pray immediately. You get up, you should call adhan and iqama, and you should pray. For the newborn, it's recommended that an individual make adhan in the right ear of the newborn. This is a sunnah, yeah, when they're born. This is a sunnah. There's khilaf on the authenticity of it. And then there's an additional, not sunnah, but recommended. So this is not a sunnah, this is not established on the Prophet ﷺ, but it is also recommended to do the iqama in the left ear. So you do adhan in the right ear and iqama in the left ear. Yes. And there are other places where the adhan is recommended. Yeah, the adhan in the right ear and the iqama in the left ear. Yeah. So the adhan in the madhab, it consists of 15 phrases. It consists of 15 phrases. Well, I guess we can count them together. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala al-falah, Hayya ala al-falah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah. That is 15 phrases. That is within the madhab. That is the Jumhur opinion. That is the majority opinion. طيب. But the Hanafis, they use the adhan of Abu Mahdura. Abu Mahdura, this is the one that was made at Fath Mecca, right, on the conquest of Mecca, and this consists of 19 phrases. How is it different? You guys know? No. So the difference is Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Right? Up until now, is there any difference? Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. You added that. So that we added how many? 4 phrases. Right? Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala al-falah, Hayya ala al-falah. No, Allah Akbar. No, wait, I'm forgetting something.
It's 19.
It's 19. So how many am I?
And you added 4.
I added 4, yes. Okay, khalas, we're good. As long as you guys, as long as you understand where it's done. But for this adhan, for the adhan with 19 phrases, their iqama is 15. All right? Versus the iqama of the Jumhur, which is 11 phrases. And what is it? How's the iqama of the Jumhur? Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. That's 11, right? So it's 11 here, and it is 15 for the Hanafis. I forgot. I probably should have done here. Huh? For the Hanafis, the adhan is 15. Yes.
Oh, it's just the same adhan.
It's the adhan of the Jumhur. Does that make sense? So these are the characteristics or the qualities of the muadhin. Who is the muadhin? The person who calls the adhan. So these are the 4 characteristics that he should have. He should be honest, he should be trustworthy, he should have a loud and attractive voice, and he should be knowledgeable of the time. Let's go through these 4 characteristics. Why these 4 in particular?
Why?
You tell me.
Well, it's honest. You can't be tricked.
Right? You can't be somebody who's.
You have to be punctual.
Yeah, right?
Wait, this is serious.
Right. Or it's a serious responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, loud and attractive voice.
You want people to hear you, you want to be calm, so.
Right? Have you heard some of those like nasty adhans? Right? may, may Allah forgive them and raise their rank and reward them for their intention. But some adhans, man, they're really. I've heard like so some of the Bedouin adhans, like they're like hilarious, man.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're like battle cries. They're like Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Like it's.
But it's not.
It's yeah, it is. I mean,
It's not like.
it's no. Yeah, it's just like some of those adhans, bro. They're very hurtful. Allah Mustaan. So what's interesting here is that it said, and this is just a statement, the imam is the dhamin, right? And the muezzin is the trustee. And this kind of indicates that the muezzin has a higher rank or a higher position. Why do you think that might be? Okay. Like you have to be the first one there. Not just that, the muezzin position, is it one that like people really strive for? No, not really. Right? It's actually looked at as a lesser position. Even though his job is much more demanding in terms of time. Right? Time-wise, there's a certain expectation for him to be there. So that's why, it's just said, it's something that's shared. So I thought I'd share it with you guys. So what are some things that are recommended for the muezzin to do? These are recommendations. These are not conditions for the adhan. So he should be standing. He should have wudu. He should be in a high place. He should face the qibla. When he reaches hayya ala salah, he should say them to the right and the left without moving his feet. He doesn't turn like this. He just moves his head. He should place his fingers in his ears, and that's just to hear yourself better, and to say as-salatu khayrun min an-nawm, and that is for the Fajr prayer. What does this mean? That if a person makes adhan sitting, his adhan is valid. If he makes adhan without wudu, his adhan is valid. If he makes adhan in a low place, it's still valid. If he is not facing the qibla, still valid. He doesn't move, or he moves his feet, still valid.
So you do kind of, I'm not walking, but you can do it kind of,
You can actually move around.
I'm gonna have my prayer mat.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. Like, is that the best way to make adhan? No, right? It's not recommended. But is the adhan valid? Yes, it would be, right? Even if he doesn't place it, he leaves his hands to the side, which we've seen in experience. That if he leaves this out, still valid. The question then comes is, when is Fajr? Right? When is it? And we'll talk about the timings for the prayers, inshallah.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
You can't be making wudu and calling
You'd probably get confused.
Yeah.
You'd have to be really loud.
Well, for yourself. Oh wait, no, they're the four. Okay.
Right, you would do before you're praying, unless you're praying in the wudu area. Right. So what about the one who hears the muezzin? Right. So the one who hears the adhan, how does he respond to the adhan? So basically, he repeats the entire adhan except the hayya alayn. Yani when the muezzin says hayya al salah and hayya al falah, he does not repeat those. He says instead, what does he say? Do you know? He says la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Right. And when the imam says, so this is in the madhab that you have to repeat at the iqamah too, right? This is in the Ḥanbali madhab. So when the imam says قد قامت الصلاة, you say أقام الله وأدامها. Yani Allah established it, and may He continue it. And then as-salatu khayran min an-nawm, you say sadaqt wa barart. And it's that you're being honest, you're being trustworthy, and you are being obedient, and you're responding to the muezzin. After the adhan is over, After the adhan is over, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad. To the end of the dua Ibrahimiyya. Then the dua of the adhan. Do you know the dua of the adhan? What's the dua of the adhan? I forgot. I remember after the adhan because I make it. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آتي محمد الوسيلة والفضيلة. All right, so that's the dua after the adhan. And then there's a general dua between adhan and iqama. The Prophet ﷺ said that between the adhan and the iqama, the dua is accepted. So that is the time that the dua is accepted. So if you have an opportunity, you should take time, sit down and make dua during that time. What does this mean? It means that you can make dua in that time. It's not an obligation, it's just recommended. And there is a special virtue for that time. So what does the adhan mean? Let's go over the meanings of the adhan. Why is it so important? Like, why this particular wording in calling the people to the prayer? And let's think about it. The first thing that the imam, or the muadhin says is Allahu Akbar, and he says it 4 times. What is the significance of that? Why start with that though? Right, to remind us that the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and not just that, Allah is greater than anything that you're doing right now. And it's just a reminder that whatever you're doing right now, Allah is for sure greater than it. He says this 4 times. And then he says what? Right, so over here, the testimony of faith, or the testification of faith, what is the significance there? Okay. So how is that significant after proclaiming Allah's greatness?
To verbalize, affirm, remind people that there is only one greater.
Right, not only is Allah greater than everything that we're doing at that time, but also in His greatness and in His majesty, He's worthy of worship, right? It's a reminder to us. And He's testifying that there is no deity of worship worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then after this, He says what? Okay, why is that important? Why is that significant at this point, or for the adhan?
Because this is part of Islam, right?
Okay. All right, so that's definitely, I agree with you 100%. That basically, if I believe that Allah is the only one worthy of worship, how do I worship Allah? By following the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. And what is the next? And if you want to follow his sunnah, you need to come to what? Come to prayer. Why? Because prayer is? How important is it? What does falah mean? Do you know? It's salvation. Allahu Akbar. Right. So basically, if you want to worship Allah, you need to follow the sunnah of His messenger, and His messenger is calling you to prayer. And why is it important? Why is that prayer important? Because it is a means to salvation. And after this, just a closing as a reminder that, hey, you're doing all of these things. Why? Because Allah is greater. And then you close with?
No God but God.
No God but God. That's always...
Yeah, right?
It's just a funny way to translate it.
Oh, really? Is it wrong?
No, it's fine. It's just like, the lowercase and capital.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. Right?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So any questions on that? Does it make sense? So the next part is the conditions of the prayer. What are things that are needed for an individual to pray? Now, there's a difference between conditions and prerequisites.
Okay.
So prerequisites are things that precede all of this. In order for me to even be eligible to pray, I need to be what? I need to be Muslim, baligh, aqil, etc. Right? Those are all the things that I need. This is the conditions for the validity of the prayer that are not in the prayer itself. So there are conditions within the prayer, and which we'll talk about. Like what? Can you name one?
Condition of the prayer?
Yeah. Like what do I have to do in order for my prayer to be valid? Like inside the prayer itself. No. That's before.
Oh,
In the prayer itself.
I guess it is Qibla.
Facing the Qibla. Yes, that is. That's a good one. For example, standing.
Okay.
Right, standing. Saying Takbirat al-Ihram, doing the first Allahu Akbar. Right, those are all conditions of the prayer within the prayer itself that are necessary.
Okay.
All right, making sajda,
Okay.
making ruku', right? All of these things are conditions for the prayer itself. These are immediately before for the validity of the prayer that is like these are like prerequisites, right?
Oh, okay.
Right, so you have preconditions like Muslim, baligh, aqil, and then you have prerequisites like these.
Okay. And so what you're saying, conditions of prayer is what makes prayer prayer.
What makes yes, what allows me basically what do I need before the prayer in order for my prayer to be valid? So I need wudu, right? The time has to start, man. So for example, can I pray Maghrib right now? No, I can't. Why? Not because it's not Maghrib time, right? Maghrib time hasn't started. I have to cover the aura. What is the aura? The aura is the part of the body that has to remain covered, right? And then there's different types of aura for in front of different people. I have to face the qibla, right? And this is a condition of the prayer. Again, outside of the prayer. I have to remove any impurities from what are the three places that cannot have impurities on them?
Where you are,
right? The place of prayer,
on your body,
on my body, and on my clothing. MashaAllah, good. Alhamdulillah. Paying a little bit of intention. Right? And the intention. So the Ḥanbalis, they don't put intention inside the prayer. They make it a prerequisite. All right? So versus the Hanafis and the Malikis, they actually say it is a condition of the prayer, within the prayer itself. Okay? That's the only difference. Any questions on this? So now we're going to talk about the time of the prayer. Because the first one, having wudu, we discussed already before, right? In Kitab al-Tahara. So now we're going to talk about the time. How do I determine the time for the prayer? And this is something that's really important. Most of the scholars start with Salat al-Dhuhr. Why?
because it's the highest form of sun.
Maybe. I always thought that they started with Dhuhr is because it's the first of the continuous prayers. Right? Because all of the prayers after Dhuhr, they're one leads into the next. Right? So Dhuhr, what does Dhuhr end with? Asr. What does Asr end with? Maghrib. What does Maghrib end with? Isha. Right? The only one that is disconnected is Fajr, and we'll talk about the Fajr time. But basically, when is Dhuhr?
Right, it begins when
Is Dhuhr here or here?
begins.
One or two? One? No. This is actually a haram time to pray. When the sun is at its zenith, when it's at its highest point, right, it has to move down a little bit. So this is actually Dhuhr time. And between these two times is a haram time to pray. You cannot pray between these two times. So this is Dhuhr time. In Asr time, which way is the sun going, by the way? It's going this way. Sorry. So this is Asr time. How do I determine Asr time?
It is midway, or the shadow.
The length of the shadow. Right. So the length of the shadow has to be equal. It has to be equal to your height. All right. So if it's equal to the height plus the zenith time.
Plus the zenith time?
Yeah. Plus the zenith shadow.
Okay. Could you clarify?
Sure. So basically, at the height, this is the shadow.
Okay.
Right?
Oh, I see. Plus the zenith.
So it has to be equal to your height
plus that.
plus this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and if it's this plus this, then that is also time. It's not enough for the shadow to be equal to your height. It's not enough. It has to be equal to your height plus plus the zenith. All right. And the next prayer is Maghrib. When is Maghrib? So if I have Maghrib here, I don't know if you guys can see me, but let me do it like this. This is the sun. When is Maghrib? That's Maghrib, right? When the sun actually clears the horizon, right? When the sun actually, and there's a difference of opinion, but when the sun actually clears the horizon, that is Maghrib time. That is Maghrib time. It has to see how it drops underneath the horizon. That's Maghrib. Like in Fajr. So when the light clears the horizon, right? When there's light on the horizon, then that's when Fajr starts. But meaning that the sun is still what? It's underneath the horizon, right? The sun is still underneath the horizon. And we'll talk a little bit more about Fajr. Like Isha, when is Isha time? So Isha is basically when the twilight disappears. That's how the Prophet ﷺ describes it. So you were right for the Ḥanbalis, right? The Maliki, Shafi'is, and Ḥanbalis, they say when the redness in the sky disappears, Isha time. Yes. That's Isha time. The redness has to completely disappear from the sky. For the Hanafis, they say the whiteness has to disappear.
Yeah, there's no light.
Yeah. So the amount of time, how long is the Maghrib time? So for the Malikis and the Shafis, it's very short. It's very short. They have to pray. Basically, they say the time for Maghrib is the time it takes after the adhan to pray 2 rak'ah, then the Maghrib prayer, and that's it. The time's finished. For the Hanafis and the Hanbalis, they say that the time extends until Isha. They say until Isha. So for Isha and Fajr, there is a difference of opinion. For Isha and Fajr, there's a difference of opinion. This is why you have multiple calendars. Like you have Qura, you have the Egypt, you have the Isna calendar. There are a number of different calendars because there's a difference of opinion on how to determine the angle of descent to where the light is going to clear the horizon. Right? Why do I need it here for Isha? Yeah, why do I need this angle of descent? Right, so to remove the light, right? Like when is the light going to actually completely clear the horizon? Right, so there's an angle for that. Like for Fajr, what happens for Fajr? The same thing. It's when the light actually begins clearing the horizon. So what are the differences of opinion? There's 18 degrees is one opinion, 15 degrees is another one, 13 degrees is another one. And some have a variable position. They say that it's different for Fajr and it's different for Isha. So they say for Fajr, and this is more universal. I shouldn't put US only. But they say for Fajr, it's 11 degrees, and for Isha, it's 13 degrees. Meaning that Fajr actually comes in later than how we calculate it now. And Isha actually comes in earlier than how we calculate it now. Yeah. So when does Isha end? This is also a point of discussion and also a difference of opinion. Some say Isha ends at midnight. This is the Ḥanbali opinion. This is a uniquely Ḥanbali opinion. And what do we mean by midnight? Midnight means from Maghrib until Fajr, the halfway point. They say that is when Isha ends because there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that says Isha ila muntasif al-layl, that Isha goes until halfway to the night. So the Hanafis, the Malikis, and the Shafis, they say no, that Isha actually extends until Fajr time. And they use a general hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said that the salawat are connected one after another. And they say Fajr is the exception. And I say, yes, Fajr is the exception both ways. And it is not connected by a salah behind it, and it is not connected by a salah in front of it. Fajr is unique. Any questions on the ending time? When is it permissible to delay prayers? What is the next one? Okay, we'll stop at that. When can you delay prayer? There are many reasons to delay prayers. Most of the scholars think it is best to pray the prayers on time. There's a slight difference of opinion between Fajr and Isha. But in general, the salawat should be made in the beginning time when the prayer time starts. Prophet ﷺ used to delay dhuhr until it got a little bit cooler because it was too hot, and people would get distracted by the heat. Isha, he said that he wanted to pray it the end of the first third before the half. He said that is the ideal time that he wanted to pray. He said, "Lawla ashaqqa ala ummati." He's like, had it not been a difficulty or hardship for my ummah, I would have prayed at this time. I would have said this time to pray.
So the now part
Huh?
differs between the others. 'Cause it's Hanafi.
No, but so they would all say that this is okay to pray. The Ḥanbalis, remember the Ḥanbalis over here it ends. But this is just the best time. That's all. In Fajr, when is it best to pray the Fajr prayer? So the Maliki, Shafi'is, and the Ḥanbalis, they say at the beginning of the time. When Fajr comes in, that's when you should pray. The Hanafis say no, they should pray at the end of the time. Like toward the end of the time. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ said, "Asfiru bil Fajr." He says, pray with the whiteness. He said, pray with the whiteness, for Fajr. And all of it is a difference of understanding of the hadith. So some of them say that asfiru means that make sure that Fajr is in. Make sure that you see the light and be for sure 100%, and then make Fajr. Then make the adhan for Fajr. Some of them say that he used to pray on time in the beginning, but the prayer used to go so long that light would start coming out and clearing the horizon. And some of them say, no, it actually means delaying the prayer. Can I pray it a little bit later? Any questions on this? What does it mean to catch the prayer? So in the madhāhib, if I catch one rak'ah before the adhan ends, before the time ends. For example, Maghrib comes in at 7:36, and I start praying at 7:33, Asr. That means I will have had enough time to make one rak'ah in the Asr time and the other three in Maghrib time. Did I catch Asr or no? Yes, I did. According to the madhab, I did. They all say that, how do you catch Jama'ah? How do you catch the congregational prayer? As long as you come in and you join before the Imam makes taslim. Before he says, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. If you get in before that, that means you caught the reward of the congregation. Except Salatul Jum'ah. So for Salatul Jum'ah, he needs to catch one rak'ah. And if he doesn't catch the rak'ah, he has to pray Dhuhr. Right? If he doesn't catch the rak'ah, and how do I catch a rak'ah? As long as I catch the Imam before he comes up from ruku'.
Before he comes up.
Yeah, so if he's in ruku', I'm still okay. The moment he comes up, that's it. I missed the rak'ah. Huh? And it has to be one. Yes. Any questions on this?
So then you can really just, it's not something we should be doing, but you get one rak'ah, or like how you said, Asr, going into Maghrib.
Yeah.
Your Asr salat is valid?
Your salah is valid, but this is called the waqt al-mudiq. Yani this is called, meaning that you're pressuring yourself at that time to catch the prayer. And most of the scholars say that the individual will be held accountable for doing that. Like, obviously unless you forgot or whatever. But if you delayed it until that time on purpose, then they say that this time you'll actually have sit on you. It's called waqt al-mudiq. Like, you've tightened the time on yourself. Why? Because you're rushing yourself now. Because you're toward the end of the prayer time. Yeah, you're wasting time. Okay, so the next part is the awrah. Inshallah, we'll talk about that next week. Or no, next week is Ramadan. So when do you guys want to have class during Ramadan? We can't. It's gonna be Maghrib time.
I don't know. I just can't do it.
Unless we do it earlier.
On Wednesday?
Yeah. Like, so we start at 6. No,
we can do earlier. I can do that for you.
Okay, let's try. Let's aim for 6 o'clock, inshallah. That way we'll finish a good 45 minutes before Maghrib, because we have to clear out the masjid. Because we're gonna be praying Maghrib outside. Yeah. Huh? Isha will be inside, inshallah. And Tarawih, بإذن الله. Yeah. You guys on Zoom, do you have any questions? You can unmute yourself and ask.
Assalamu alaikum. I have one question. So you said that if Salat al-Asr is at Salat al-Maghrib is at 7:36 and we pray at 7:33, Asr would be counted. But then isn't the time right before Maghrib the time for the sunset? So we can't really pray during sunset, right?
Okay, so that is the waqt that is haram to pray unless you have a reason. So the obligation in this case would take precedence over the hurma. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay. All right, that's okay.
I mean, any other questions? Osman?
نعم شيخنا. I'm good.
Yeah, good. Okay, خلاص. Inshallah, I guess I'll be seeing you after Maghrib.
Yes, inshallah. Yeah.
يلا. All right. جزاكم الله خير والله أعلم وصلى الله على خير خلق نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.